Hi, I hope you're doing well. Today we are finally doing some coding. You can open up the project that we created in the first video, the console test. If you didn't watch it, there will be a link somewhere around here, or you can just create a console project somewhere in your system. Today we are going to see namespaces, access modifiers, what are keywords. We are going to see a class, how does it work. We are going to define some properties in the next videos. We are going to talk a little bit more in depth about them. We are also going to do our first commit and our gitignore file with a README file, and then putting everything on GitHub. So GitHub is a website, server-based. You can store all of your projects there. Most developers use GitHub to store and share their work with other people. It kind of works like a social media for developers, but also to save our projects and develop them, because there's also a lot of features that GitHub offer, like actions. You can upload packages there. So I totally encourage you to create an account in GitHub and follow the steps that I'm going to do right now. So the first thing we are going to do is just quickly set up Git in here before we start anything. This is something that I like to do whenever I start a project, whenever I create a new project. I open up the terminal and then I give it a git init. This will initialize the repository in my machine, which we can then in our GitHub account create another repository and associate the remote repository with ours. So let's give it a git init, and this will initialize the repository here. Okay, so now you can see that everything is green because everything is untracked. And if we go to the source control, you'll see that we have a lot of files in here. We have this DLL executable file, JSON files in here, and we don't need those. This bin and this object folder are created by default by .NET, and it is unnecessary for us to upload the repository with these folders because they will be created automatically by .NET, so there's no need to upload them. In order to avoid uploading these folders and files, we can create a new file called gitignore. Okay, there's no name. You don't put like some name in here. All right, it's just .gitignore. So now in gitignore, we can add all the files and all the folders that we want to avoid uploading to our GitHub repository. So I'm going to put bin and object obj. Give it a save, and now you can see that our folders are in gray, right? Because they are being ignored. And if we go to our source control, there's only 4 files untracked. If you wanted to ignore a specific extension of files, you could use asterisk or star dot and then the extension of the file. Like for example, I can put the CS project here, and now you can see that the CS project file is gray, and if we had more than one in here, they would all be gray. So you can see that there is no console test name, but it is being ignored because of the extension of the file. However, we are going to take this line off here. I just put it there to show you, but we actually need the CS project. The CS project is necessary. This file says the configuration that we have. So you can see the output will be an executable file. We can see the framework. We can see if we have nullable variables. And if we install any packages or add any references, everything that we do related to the project will be in here, all the configurations and everything. So next thing we're going to do is just do our first commit. We can add all of these files hitting this plus button, and now you can see the files were untracked and now they are added. This A is for added, and we can make our first message, which most often is first commit, right? This is everybody's first message in the comments. However, we can come here in the extensions and install a emoji log extension. And you can see that this extension is just to make our comments kind of prettier and more detailed. So I just installed the extension, you can see it here. And if we go back, we can see that there is this purple smiley face. And we can choose the type of comments that we are doing. Is it a fix on the system? Are we improving something? In our case right now, it's new because we're creating a new project, and that's what we can write. So new, and then some message like creating project. And now you're going to see that we are going to have an error. You will probably too if you don't have a file configured, which I don't. You can see that this error pops up. Make sure you configure your user.name and user.email in Git. What does this mean is that in our Git repository that was created when we did the Git init, if I open the File Explorer in here, you will see that we have a git.git folder. And this folder is kind of what tracks our whole project. So now we need a username and the email associated in this .git folder. Now we need our username and email associated in this .git folder. So to do that, we just give it this command, git config, and then we pass what we want to configure, which is user.name, and then the value that we want to configure to this variable. Okay, so now we can go and do the same thing to the email, and if you wrote anything wrong, you can just execute the command again and rename whatever you did wrong. Okay, so both values are configured. We can go back to our VS Code, and now we can commit, and it should probably work. And we commit it just like that. And here in the graph, you can see that we have our first commit, and here we have the name of the branch, 4 files changed, the message of the commit, and then the person who did the commit. If you're working with more persons and there's a commit that you didn't do, it was probably somebody else, and their name will appear here. And also the date and the hour when this was made. Now we have this publish branch button here, but we didn't assign our repository with any remote repository or with any repository at all. So we are going to GitHub. And then you are going to, if you don't have a GitHub account, create one, and then go to your repositories. And in here you can create a new repository. Then you can give a repository name, which I will give the same name. I always give the same name as the project, so I'm just going to do console test. You can give it a description, but I don't think it's necessary right now. And then in here we have some configurations for the repository. We can choose the visibility, which is public by default, but you can make it private. And you can also add a README file, but we don't need to because we are going to add it through the code. And we already added the gitignore, so we don't need to add it again, so no gitignore. And there is also the license, which I just keep it as no license. I think this MIT license is for free use, but I'm not sure. Or maybe this Creative Commons. And now you can just create the repository. You just need to put the repository name, leave everything as it is, and then create the repository, unless you want to make it private so it just appears to you. So you click the button, and now you can see, because we don't have anything in here, it is asking us to do a quick setup, right? So in here, you have all the commands that you need to execute through the terminal to associate and push the project inside this remote repository. So there's only these 3 lines that we are missing. So this first line, git branch -m main, will rename our branch to main. By default, when you initialize a Git repository, it will give a master name to your branch, but you can execute this command, git branch -m main, and this will rename your branch from master to main. Okay, I think the page was a bit small, so I gave it a zoom. Here's the second line that we are missing. This is important because with this line we are associating this remote repository with our local repository in our machine. So that is the command git remote add origin, and then the URL to the remote repository. Now the last line, which is git push -u origin main, and this will push our repository in our machine to this remote repository in GitHub. But you could also click on that publish branch button in Visual Code. Yeah, this one. But I'm just going to execute it through the terminal. Okay, so everything seems to be fine. If you go back to the VS Code, you can see that there's no message, there's no publishing branch now, because there's nothing to publish. We already did it. So if we go back to the GitHub page and give it a refresh, you can see here that we have our project already published. So I forgot to add the README file, so we can do that right now. New file, and then you are going to write readme.md. MD stands for Markdown. Markdown files are often used to make articles or to make documentation. It is very simple and easy to write them. So basically we are just going to define a simple title here. To define titles you use hashtag and then the title that you want to, like console test project. And then here you can give a full description or something. And then if you want subtitles, you can do 2 times 2 hashtags and then subtitles. And we can also open up our command palette and we can search for preview. And then you can go to Markdown, open preview. And this will open up the preview to our README file. You can also just drag this tab and then divide the screen in 2 pieces. And now we can see the README file and at the same time the preview of it. How is it going to look like in GitHub? If you wanted to make another title, you could do like 3 times and then there is another small title, a subtitle of the subtitles. And if you wanted to add a 4th one, you could also do it. And you can do this 6 times. You can add 6 hashtags. If you wanted to add 7, then it wouldn't work. I'm just going to give it a simple description. This is a simple project to learn the basics of programming with .NET and C#. And then you can also give a Windows flag dot, and with this you can add an emoji. So now we can save the file. This is how it looks like. We can close this preview and we can go to our source control and commit this change. You can add new or doc, which is anything documentation related. I'm going to do this and I'm going to write adding README file. Then you can commit, and sync changes will push and pull at the same time. So if there's anything to pull and you sync changes, it is going to do both. It will push and it will pull. The pull operation is necessary when there is something in the remote repository that we don't have in our machine, and It happens very often when you're working with a team with coworkers. They are doing different things and they are merging with the branch, and you need to pull their work to your local repository. But right now we can sync changes, and you can see this message. This action will pull and push commits from and to README, and we can just click OK. So now you can see here in the graph that we have another commit. And this is the great thing about Git. You can track everything that you are doing without missing anything. You know everything that you changed, and you know everything that you have created. So Git is a very good thing to learn, and it's used in a lot of companies. So now we are getting to the coding part. We are going to see what are namespaces. And for that, I'm going to use a very common example with vehicles like cars and bicycles and trucks and any kind of vehicle. So whenever we want to create something, any entity, we want to create a class. And we are also going to see how does that work. So right now I'm going to create a new folder, which will be called entities. And this folder will have all the classes that will represent things that exist in real life, all these vehicles, okay? So I'm going to create this entities folder, and I'm going to create a new file called vehicle.cs. CS is the C# extension. Then you can hit enter and create this. Now, if we wanted to create like a car.cs, bicycle.cs, truck.cs, all of these vehicles, all of these entities would be here inside of this folder entity. You will probably see other projects where they have all classes and everything in the same folder. I just like to keep it organized. I make a folder for every category of classes that we have, and right now we have these entities which will hold all the classes, everything that can represent an entity. To declare a namespace, we just write namespace, and now the namespace is the root folder all the way to the folder that we are in. So the root folder of the project is console test, as you can see up here. This is the root folder. Then you give it a dot, and then all the way down. So entities is the next folder, and we must put a semicolon at the end of every line because we are working with C# and it is a strongly typed language, and the semicolon is part of the program language. It needs to know where the line ends, and this is what you use to define it. We could also declare this like an object, and if you're using Visual Studio Community, it will create like this with these braces, and then here the class with the name that you defined. However, we are using Visual Studio Code, and I like to put a semicolon here because we save a few lines and we save a little bit of horizontal space. Now we define the namespace, and you can see the root folder and then the entities folder because that's the order here. If there was another folder in here and the vehicle was inside the folder, then we would need to go entities dot and then the name of the other folder. If we pass another namespace here, instead of the name of the folder, we can do like not an entity. And then you can see here that we get these 3 dots. This is not an error or a warning, it's more like a suggestion. And then you can see that we have here namespace console test not an entity does not match folder structure expected console test dot entities, because that's our folder structure and that's how namespaces should be. So I just give it an entities. And now to define the class, the first thing that we need to do is pass an access modifier. So an access modifier for a class, when we are going to define a class, it must be public or internal. and it would often be public. So we can just pass public, which will make our class public, and to define a class you just put class, and the name of the class will be vehicle. Now we can add braces, and inside the class we are going to define some properties. So this public, like I said, is an access modifier. We have a lot of them. An access modifier can change who can access or can't access our class or the properties of our class. I'm going to put an image from the official Microsoft Learn website somewhere. And also the link where I took this picture from is in the description. And you can do your own research in a trusted source. So we can't declare this class as private. You will see here that elements defined in a namespace cannot be explicitly declared as private protect internal, or private protect. This means that whenever we are defining a class in a namespace, it must be internal or public. So if we want, we can do internal here. And this won't change anything for this project. This class would be unavailable for other projects that has this one as reference. But we don't need to do this. We can just keep it public, and you will see access modifiers later on and things will be clearer. So now we can define our properties. You can just type prop and then tab, and it will create by default the property for you. So the first property we are going to define will be float max speed, because all vehicles have a max speed, right? Now, another thing, I don't really like this theme, so I'm just going to do a Ctrl+Shift+P and theme. And then here on preferences, we can change the color theme. And I like this Visual Studio 2019 dark. Just the way that I like. But if you like any other theme, you are more than welcome to use it. This is more like a personal taste. So now the second property we are going to define, we'll keep it an int and then capacity, because every vehicle has a capacity. So now we can see a little bit of what we talked about in the last video. C# being a strongly typed language, we must define what is a float type, what is an int. If you didn't watch the video, the link will be somewhere here and you can check it out. But a strongly typed language means that you must define a data type for your variable. I can't just have like a public something, right? This just goes crazy and give me a lot of syntax errors. So I must define a data type for everything. We also have this get and set. This just means that we can get the value, right, of the variable, and we can also set the value of the variable. If we wanted this variable to be read-only, right, we just wanted people to get the max speed and not set it, then we would give it a private, right? And the max speed could only be changed inside this class, because we have an access modifier private, which means it can only be changed within this class in this file, just like in the picture I showed you. And you can also go check the link and do your own research, read articles on the internet, and feed your knowledge as much as possible. But don't go too far, don't try to take a big step. Go light, see what you need to see, practice a little bit, and then go to the next video and take the next step. So what we want to do here is keep everything public. We want to change everything, set everything, get everything. So this is good. In the future videos, we are going to add more properties. We are going to do more things in this class. We are going to change this class a lot, and it will be a lot of information. So let's just take it easy right now. So everything you see in here that is blue, this namespace word, this public, this one, float, int, class, all of them are called keywords. So keywords are just specific words of the programming language that the compiler needs to identify. A good practice is to avoid naming variables and naming classes with the same name as a keyword. Another thing good to mention here is that in .NET we use Pascal case most often for property names, classes names, and then for variables and methods we use camel case, and camel case is the first letter in lowercase and then the rest of the first letters of the next words are in uppercase. You can see here that we also get a suggestion. Naming rule violation, these words must begin with uppercase character. This is not like this is not a warning or an error. This is just a convention. A good practice, a good thing to do is respecting the naming convention of the language. We can click here on quick fix and then fix the name violation. There we go. And besides avoiding keywords, we also want to avoid naming classes with classes that .NET already brings us. So for example, .NET has a class called JSON serializer. If we come here to the program CS and we write JSON serializer, you can see that this is part of the namespace system.text.json. Okay, so we don't want to give the same names for our classes as .NET has. I'm just also going to remove this line. And now if we wanted to use our vehicle class in the program.cs, we could write vehicle, and then you can see the namespace at the end, which is console.test.entities, right? We need to use this namespace because if we don't pass it, just write it like this. Now we can see that there is an error. The type or namespace name vehicle could not be found. And that's because we are not using the namespace where this class is defined. So you can just give a control space and enter. And there we go. We are now using this namespace, okay? So whenever you want to use a class that is defined in some namespace, you need to do using and then the namespace, and then you will have access to the class. So now you can see that we have this warning. This is a warning when it's like a yellow line underneath. That's a warning. A red line underneath, it's an error. And then those 3 dots are suggestions. So our problem here is because the variable is declared but never used. You can see here on this error, actually this warning. The thing about warnings is that your code still runs, but they kind of leave room for error, right? And they pollute the code. It's uglier. You have this yellow thing going on. What we want to see is something cleaner, something with no warnings or errors. So you can just comment this line, and then you can see that the opacity of this line came down. That's because we are using a namespace and not using anything from it. So here you have the suggestion, which is using directive is unnecessary. Then you can remove, right? Another thing here is this 2 slashes. This is used for commenting. Whenever you do a comment, it can be to document something or ignore a line temporarily. In this case, we are ignoring this line for now. We are going to see in the next videos how to instantiate a class. We are going to work with objects, add more properties to our class. And in the next video, we are going to see reference type and value types and how do they behave in the memory and why is it important to understand that. So now we have our first entity. We made our first comment. So let's just save this historic moment. We can add a new, and you can write here first class or entity or whatever you want to name it. Then we can commit this. We can sync the changes. Once again, a sync will pull and will push at the same time. So if you're working with more people, be sure that you're doing it right. Now, if we go to our GitHub page and give it a refresh, you can see that the latest commit is new first class. So there was a lot of information in this video. What I suggest you to do is keep watching this series, go see variables, go see what it's value type and reference type, see the conditions that we have in C#, if, else, switch, see the loops for each for, how do they work, and then after that I'm going to give you an overview with everything, 3 challenges for you to do, and 2 challenges that I have done just to use everything that we are learning. And then after that, when you have the basics of programming, I suggest you to practice more and more and then go to sites like Code Wars and just start solving problems. After we cover the basics, the if, the else's, the loops, we are going to see what's the meaning of a oriented object programming language and the 4 pillars of a oriented object programming language. We are also going to see the principles of solid, which is very important, and then we are going to start to make some real projects. So if this video was helpful, leave it a like, subscribe, don't miss anything. If you have any questions or any valuable information, please leave it in the comments. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next one.